my girlfriend yelled. If you walk out that door, don't you dare come back. I looked at her and said, I want to see what happens. Then I grabbed my things and left. A week later, she called me in tears. By that time, I was already in another city, spending time with her coworker, getting to know her, and realizing this new chapter might actually be worth it. I'm Alex, 29M. My girlfriend, Jenna, 27F. We've been together a little over 2 years and living together for the last 8 months. On paper, it looks fine. We both work full-time, split rent, same friend circle, same routines. In real life, it's felt like walking on broken glass for a while now. Jenna has this way of talking that makes everything feel like a test I didn't study for. Every disagreement turns into her keeping score. If I forget to text back fast enough, it's because I don't prioritize her. If I want a quiet night in, I'm boring now. If I push back at all, I'm suddenly starting something. The night everything cracked started over something stupid. She came home late from work, slammed her bag on the counter, and immediately went in on me for not unloading the dishwasher the right way. Not that it wasn't done, just not her way. I tried to brush it off. Bad day, whatever. But she kept going, voice sharp, eyes already looking past me like she'd decided I was the problem before the conversation even started. I told her, calmly, that I was tired of feeling like I was always doing something wrong, that I needed her to stop talking to me like I was a child she was disappointed in. She laughed, actually laughed, then said, if you can't handle how I am, maybe you should just leave. I stood there for a second, thinking she'd realize how messed up that sounded. Instead, she crossed her arms and doubled down. If you leave through that door, she yelled, don't you dare come back. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet in my head. I said, I want to see what happens. Then I grabbed my jacket, my backpack, and my keys, and walked out. I didn't know it then, but that door closing behind me wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. I slept in my car that first night, not out of some dramatic gesture, but because everything was closed and I didn't feel like calling anyone to explain what had just happened. I parked a few blocks away from our apartment, reclined the seat, and stared at the ceiling until my phone battery hit 12%. Jenna didn't text. Not that night. Not the next morning either. By noon the next day, the shock wore off and the logistics kicked in. I showered at the gym, changed clothes, went to work like nothing had happened. That might sound cold, but honestly, work felt easier than being at home. No tone, no sighs, no passive-aggressive comments disguised as jokes. Around 3 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. Her name popped up. Are you done being dramatic yet? No, are you okay? No, where did you go? Just that. I didn't respond. Not out of spite. I just didn't know what to say that wouldn't turn into another argument where somehow I'd end up apologizing for reacting to something she said. That night, I booked a cheap Airbnb for the week. I told myself it was temporary. Space. Clarity. The kind of thing people on this subreddit always recommend before deciding anything big. Jenna texted again. So you're really not coming back? I said, you told me not to. She replied almost instantly. I didn't think you'd actually do it. That sentence stuck with me. Not because it hurt, but because it explained so much. She wasn't afraid I'd leave. She was confident I wouldn't. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. No blow-ups. No apologies. Just short, clipped messages about practical stuff. Bills. Mail. Whether I was still sulking. Then, on day 4, something unexpected happened. I ran into her coworker, Mia, at a coffee shop near my office. We'd met a few times before. Always friendly. Always seemed uncomfortable around Jenna, now that I think about it. She looked surprised to see me alone. Asked how Jenna was. I told her we were taking space. Mia hesitated, then said, yeah, that tracks. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just between me and Jenna, and that maybe leaving hadn't been the mistake I thought it was. I asked Mia what she meant, but she immediately tried to backpedal. Said it was nothing. Said she didn't want to get involved. That alone told me it wasn't nothing. We ended up sitting down anyway. Not some dramatic heart-to-heart. Just 2 people killing time with coffee. She kept glancing at her phone like she was worried Jenna might materialize out of thin air. Finally, she sighed and said, look, I don't want to talk trash about her. She's a lot at work too. That word again. A lot. Mia told me Jenna had been complaining about me for months. About how I didn't match her ambition. How I was too comfortable. How she felt like she was dragging me forward while I resisted growth. Hearing that secondhand was surreal, because she'd never said any of that to my face. To me, She just rolled her eyes or snapped when things didn't go her way. Apparently, she'd also been telling people that if I ever left, I'd come crawling back. That she had me locked in. Mia didn't say it smugly. More like she felt weird repeating it. I laughed when she told me. Not because it was funny, but because it finally made sense. The ultimatum. The yelling. The confidence in her voice when she told me not to come back. She wasn't setting a boundary. She was testing control. That night, back at the Airbnb, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the last year of our relationship. All the little moments I'd brushed off. The way she'd correct me in front of friends. The way disagreements always ended with me apologizing just to restore peace. The way she'd say, "You're lucky I'm so patient with you." Like she was doing me a favor by staying. On day 6, she finally called. Not texted. Called. She sounded different. Softer. Emotional. Told me she'd been thinking a lot. That she didn't mean what she said. That she was just angry and scared. Then she started crying. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she said again, like it was the key point. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just listened. And somewhere between her tears and her half apologies, I realized something uncomfortable but clear. She wasn't upset that she hurt me. She was upset that her bluff didn't work. The call ended with her asking when I was coming home. Not if. When. I told her I needed more time. She didn't like that. I could hear it in the silence before she said, "Okay," in that tight, controlled voice she uses when she's clearly not okay at all. The next morning, I woke up to a long text. Paragraphs. Bullet points, even. A breakdown of everything she'd been putting up with in our relationship. How she felt unsupported. How she carried the emotional load. How my leaving had embarrassed her. That last part stood out. Embarrassed. Not hurt. Not scared. Embarrassed. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I took a drive with no destination. Ended up crossing the state line without really meaning to. Booked another Airbnb, this time farther out. New city. New surroundings. It felt impulsive, but also right. Like I needed physical distance to match what was already happening emotionally. That evening, Mia texted me. She said Jenna had been spiraling at work, telling people I'd abandoned her, that I was having some kind of breakdown. She asked if I was okay. I told her the truth, that I felt clearer than I had in months. We started talking more after that. Nothing flirty at first, just honest. She told me about how draining Jenna could be, how everyone at work walked on eggshells around her, how Jenna liked having backup plans, whether it was friendships, favors, or people who validated her when things didn't go her way. Mia wasn't like that. She listened without trying to win the conversation. When I spoke, she didn't interrupt or twist my words. It was unsettling how easy it felt. By the end of the week, Jenna called again. This time angry. She accused me of ignoring her on purpose. Said I was being cruel. Said I was punishing her. I told her I wasn't punishing anyone. I was just gone. That's when she said something that finally sealed it for me. "You're really going to throw everything away just to prove a point?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "No. I left because I finally stopped proving yours." She hung up. A week later, she called me in tears. By then, I was already unpacking my bag in a different city and starting to see that maybe leaving wasn't running away at all. Her call came late. Almost midnight. I knew it was her before I even looked at the screen. Same number. Same weight in my chest. She was crying hard this time. Not the controlled kind. The messy, panicked kind. She said she couldn't sleep. Said the apartment felt empty. Said she didn't understand how things got this far so fast. "I didn't mean it," she kept repeating. "You know I didn't mean it." I let her talk. I've learned that interrupting Jenna only makes her louder. She told me she'd been replaying that night over and over. How she was just angry. How she expected me to cool off and come back. How she never thought I'd actually leave the city. That's when I told her I wasn't coming back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The crying stopped instantly. Like someone flipped a switch. Her voice hardened. "So this is it?" she asked. "You just disappear and move on like I meant nothing?" I told her that wasn't fair. That I didn't disappear. That I left after she told me to. That I was taking space to figure out if this relationship was even healthy for me anymore. She scoffed. Said I was being dramatic again. Said everyone fights. Said I was throwing away 2 years over one sentence. I almost believed her. Almost. But then I thought about how that sentence didn't come out of nowhere. It came from months of tension, control, and me shrinking myself to keep the peace. She asked where I was staying. I didn't answer. She accused me of hiding something. Of hiding someone. That accusation landed differently than she probably intended. Not because it was true in the way she meant, but because I realized how fast her fear turned into blame. After we hung up, I sat there in the dark for a long time. The city outside my window was unfamiliar, quiet. For the first time, I felt something close to relief. The next day, I met Mia for lunch. In person this time. We talked about normal things. Work, music, why we both hated small talk. It wasn't a date. It didn't feel like one. It felt like breathing. When I told her Jenna had called, Mia didn't say, "I told you so." She just nodded and said, "She hates losing control." That night, Jenna texted me again. "If you don't come back, don't expect me to wait." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I realized something quietly devastating. I didn't want her to wait. The silence after that text felt heavier than all the arguments combined. Jenna didn't message again that night, or the next morning, or the day after. For the first time since I'd left, she actually went quiet. That should have worried me. Instead, it felt like pressure releasing. Mia and I kept talking, still low-key, still careful. We didn't label anything. We just existed in the same space sometimes. Coffee after work, a walk through a park I'd never seen before, conversations that didn't feel like negotiations. She never made comments about how I should be, never corrected me mid-sentence, never treated disagreement like disrespect. One night, she asked me something simple. "Do you miss her?" I thought about it longer than I expected. Not because the answer was complicated, but because I wanted to be honest. "I miss who I thought she was," I said. "I don't miss how I felt around her." Mia nodded like that made complete sense. No judgment, no advice, just understanding. 3 days later, Jenna resurfaced. This time with anger disguised as confidence. She told me she'd been doing great, that she'd gone out with friends, that people were telling her she deserved better anyway. The message was clear. She wanted me to feel replaceable. I didn't react. That seemed to bother her more than anything else. She asked if I was seeing someone. I said I was getting to know people. That was true. I didn't know her details, and for once, I didn't feel guilty about that. She snapped back that it didn't take me long. Said it proved she'd never really mattered to me. Said I always needed someone else. I almost laughed at that. Because for 2 years, I'd been the one bending, adjusting, staying. I told her this wasn't a competition, that I wasn't trying to win the breakup, that I was just choosing peace. Her last message that night said, "You'll regret this when you realize what you lost." I read it once. Then I put my phone face down and went back to talking with Mia about nothing important at all. That's when it hit me. For the first time in a long time, my life wasn't shrinking around someone else's emotions. It was quietly opening up. About a week after that, Jenna showed up at my old place. I only know because my phone blew up while I was at work. Missed calls, texts, a voicemail. She was furious that I hadn't told her I'd officially moved my things out. Apparently, seeing my closet half empty and my desk cleared hit her harder than she expected. "You planned this," she accused over the phone later that night. "You were already halfway gone before the fight, weren't you?" I told her no. That I'd stayed as long as I did because I kept hoping things would settle. That I didn't leave because of another woman. I left because I couldn't recognize myself anymore. She didn't accept that. She never really did. She started nitpicking the past, rewriting it. Suddenly, she was the one walking on eggshells. Suddenly, I was emotionally unavailable. Suddenly, every boundary I tried to set was framed as me being selfish. It was exhausting. And for the first time, I didn't feel obligated to keep up. Meanwhile, my life in this new city was taking shape in small, quiet ways. I found a short-term lease, a coffee shop where the barista remembered my order, a gym where no one knew me as half of a couple. Mia introduced me to a few friends, not as Jenna's boyfriend, but just Alex. That difference mattered more than I expected. One evening, Jenna called again, this time calmer, controlled. She told me she'd been reflecting, that she was willing to meet me halfway if I came back, that she'd try not to say things she didn't mean when she was angry. I asked her one question. "What happens the next time you do?" She didn't have an answer, just silence. Then, annoyed breathing. Then, "Why are you doing this?" I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was finally true. Because I don't want to live my life bracing for the next outburst. She hung up without saying goodbye. That night, Mia and I sat on her balcony with cheap takeout and watched traffic crawl below us. At some point, she leaned her head against my shoulder. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a declaration. It just felt easy. And that's when I knew. Not that I was in love. Not that I'd moved on perfectly. But that whatever I'd left behind wasn't something I wanted to go back to. Jenna didn't disappear quietly. A few days after that last call, mutual friends started reaching out. Casual at first. Hey, just checking in. Then less subtle. So, what actually happened between you two? I could tell whose version they'd heard. Apparently, Jenna was telling people I'd blindsided her, that I'd been emotionally checked out for months, that I left without warning and immediately started something new. She framed herself as shocked, hurt, confused. I wasn't surprised. She'd always cared deeply about how things looked. What surprised me was how little it bothered me. I corrected a couple people calmly. Didn't argue. Didn't defend myself aggressively. Just said, she told me to leave. I did. Everything after that was her reacting to not being in control anymore. Some believed me. Some didn't. I stopped caring which was which. Jenna, on the other hand, cared a lot. She sent a long message one night accusing me of replacing her with a downgrade. That was the word she used. Downgrade. She said Mia was just pretending to be nice. That she'd get bored of me. That I'd realize I'd thrown away someone who actually challenged me. I stared at that text for a long time. Not because it hurt. Because it confirmed something I'd been trying not to admit. She never saw kindness as strength. Only leverage. I didn't reply. The next day, Mia asked if I was okay. I hadn't told her about the message, but she could tell something was off. I showed it to her, half expecting her to get defensive. She didn't. She just handed my phone back and said, "That sounds exhausting." That was it. No insults. No counterattack. No need to win. Later that night, we talked about boundaries. About taking things slow. About not dragging old damage into something new. It felt adult. Intentional. Safe. And in that moment, I realized the real difference between what I'd left and what I was stepping into. With Jenna, everything felt like a power struggle. Here, nothing did. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove my worth to someone who was always measuring it. I was just enough. The last time Jenna and I spoke wasn't dramatic. No yelling. No tears. Just sharp, bitter clarity. She called because she'd found out I was still in the other city. Not visiting. Not cooling off. Staying. She asked if this was permanent. I told her I didn't know yet, but I wasn't planning on coming back anytime soon. That figures, she said. You always run when things get hard. I almost corrected her. Almost listed all the times I stayed when things were hard. All the times I swallowed my feelings to keep things smooth. But I didn't. I finally understood that explaining myself to her wasn't closure. It was just reopening the door. She asked if I loved Mia. I said no. Not like that. Not yet. That seemed to make her angrier than if I'd said yes. So what? She's just a placeholder, she snapped. Someone to make you feel better about yourself? I told her that wasn't fair. That Mia didn't need me to feel better about myself. That she wasn't asking me to be anything other than what I already was. Jenna laughed, short and mean. Give it time, she said. She'll get bored. They always do. That sentence was the clearest window into her mindset I'd ever gotten. To her, people didn't stay because they chose you. They stayed because you kept them in line. I told her I hoped she found whatever she was looking for. I meant it, in a distant way. Not out of love. Out of relief. She hung up without responding. After that, something strange happened. I stopped checking my phone. Days went by without her name popping up on my screen, and instead of anxiety, I felt light. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't realize it until I finally exhaled. Mia and I weren't rushing anything. We talked openly about fears, about patterns, about not repeating old mistakes. No games. No ultimatums. No tests disguised as love. One night, as we were walking back to her place, she asked me something quietly. Do you ever wish you'd stayed? I thought about it. Really thought. Then I said, no, I wish I'd left sooner. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty saying it. It's been a little over 2 months since I walked out that door. Jenna and I haven't spoken in weeks now. No surprise texts. No late night calls. No last attempts to rewrite the ending. From what I've heard through the grapevine, she's telling people she's doing amazing and focusing on herself. I hope that's true. Genuinely. But it's also not my responsibility anymore. I moved into a small place of my own. Nothing fancy. Secondhand couch. Mismatched plates. A view of a brick wall out the kitchen window. It's quiet. Peaceful. Mine. Mia and I are still taking things slow. No labels. No pressure. Just showing up and seeing where it goes. Some nights we're together. Some nights we're not. And somehow, that feels healthier than anything I've had in years. The weirdest part of all this is how normal life feels now. No bracing myself when my phone buzzes. No replaying conversations to figure out what I did wrong. No shrinking my opinions to keep the mood stable. I laugh more. I sleep better. I feel like myself again. Looking back, The moment that ended everything wasn't when she yelled at me. It wasn't even when she told me not to come back. It was when I realized she never thought I actually would. That's not love. That's possession. So yeah, she told me if I left through that door, not to dare come back. I answered that I wanted to see what would happen. And I did. What happened was I found out who I am when I'm not being managed, corrected, or controlled. And honestly, I'm not going back.